The stars above Gideon IV shimmered like diamonds, peaceful and quiet. But peace was an illusion. In the skies, destruction had arrived. The Excelvok Dominion, a brutal alien empire, had come without warning. Their warships, dark and massive, hovered over the human colony like monsters. Their weapons rained fire upon the cities below. Buildings crumbled. People ran, screamed, and fought to survive. But they were outmatched. The Excelvok gave no mercy. For years, they had conquered weaker species across the galaxy, expanding their empire. To them, humans were no different. Just another race to enslave. Just another planet to burn. Inside the underground command bunker, Governor Samuel Drake of Gideon IV clenched his fists. His face was covered in sweat and dust. The screens around him showed the horror above. Warships attacking, soldiers falling, civilians crying for help. Drake slammed his hand against the metal table. "Where is the fleet?" he growled. Beside him, Commander Rachel Voss, the highest-ranking officer on the planet, shook her head. "Still 4 hours away. We won't last that long." A tremor shook the bunker as another explosion hit the surface. Dust fell from the ceiling. The Excelvok were destroying everything. Drake turned to a holographic communicator. A connection was open to Admiral Elias Carter, the leader of the Terran Defense Fleet. Carter's stern face appeared, his silver eyes burning with anger. "Sir," Drake said, voice tight, "we need reinforcements now." Carter's expression did not change. "We're coming," he said, "but listen carefully." Drake swallowed hard. "Go ahead." Carter's voice was cold and steady. "If Gideon IV falls, they won't stop. They will come for Earth next." Drake knew it was true. Humanity had expanded across the stars, but they had never faced a full-scale war like this. The Excelvok were testing them, seeing if humans were weak. But humans were not weak. Drake took a deep breath. "Then we make them regret this." Rachel Voss nodded. "I'll gather what forces we have left. We fight till the last man." Carter's face hardened. "Good. But if you fall, send this message to the Excelvok: withdraw, or your worlds will burn." Drake's heart pounded. It was a bold message, one that could change the course of history. "Understood, Admiral," Drake said. The screen went dark. Outside, the battle raged on. Human resistance forces fought bravely, using every weapon they had. Fighter ships zipped through the skies, launching missiles at the enemy. Soldiers fired from the rooftops, taking down as many Excelvok as they could. But the enemy was too strong, too many. In the end, the colony could not hold. 4 hours later, the Terran Defense Fleet arrived, but it was too late. Gideon IV was nothing more than burning ruins. Over 10 million people were gone. A terrible silence filled the war room aboard the TDS Vengeance, Admiral Carter's flagship. The images of the destroyed colony played on the screens. The officers stood still, their faces pale with shock. Carter stared at the destruction. His hands gripped the metal rail so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Sir," a voice said behind him. It was Captain Darius Cole, one of his most trusted officers. "What are your orders?" For a moment, Carter said nothing. Then, slowly, he turned. His expression was unreadable, but his voice carried the weight of a storm. "Send the message," Carter said. "Let the whole galaxy hear it." Cole hesitated. "Are you sure?" Carter's eyes burned like fire. "I have never been more sure." Moments later, a signal was broadcast across every known communication channel. The message was short, simple, and terrifying. "This is a warning to the Excelvok Dominion. You have attacked us without cause. You have burned our worlds. You believe we are weak. You are wrong. Withdraw, or your worlds will burn." The galaxy went silent. The war had begun. The Excelvok Dominion did not take the human warning seriously. They had crushed countless civilizations before. They had burned worlds, enslaved species, and absorbed entire star systems into their empire. To them, humans were just another primitive race, no different from the many they had already conquered. So they ignored the message. They pushed forward. Days after the fall of Gideon IV, the Selvok fleet set its sights on New Olympus, another human colony. It was larger than Gideon IV, home to over 20 million people. The Dominion believed it would be an easy victory. They were wrong. Aboard the TDS Vengeance, Admiral Elias Carter stood on the bridge of his flagship, arms crossed behind his back. His sharp eyes scanned the holographic display in front of him. It showed the incoming Dominion fleet, 50 warships, heavy cruisers, and assault carriers, all heading toward New Olympus. The officers around him whispered nervously. The Selvok outnumbered them. Their ships were larger, their weapons deadlier. But Carter was not afraid. He turned to Captain Adrian Voss, commander of the elite Shadow Squadron, a group of highly trained human pilots. "Are the stealth ships in position?" Carter asked. Voss nodded. Her dark hair was pulled back, and her face was calm despite the storm ahead. "Yes, Admiral. They're waiting for your signal." Carter took a deep breath. "Then let's show the Selvok what a mistake they've made." He turned toward his communications officer. "Signal all ships. Operation Retribution begins now." The Battle of New Olympus. The Selvok fleet arrived at the colony expecting no resistance. They expected another easy victory. Instead, they found a trap. As soon as the Dominion ships entered orbit, hidden human warships decloaked from behind the planet's moons. Humanity had spent years developing stealth technology, something the Dominion never considered possible. Their war doctrine relied on brute force, not strategy. But humans were different. The first attack came fast. A squadron of human corvettes launched a barrage of railgun rounds, their projectiles moving at near light speed. The kinetic energy was devastating. 3 Dominion cruisers exploded instantly, their hulls ripped apart like paper. Before the Selvok could react, human strike craft swarmed through their formations, targeting weak points in their armor. Missiles, plasma cannons, and EMP blasts rained destruction upon the invaders. On the bridge of the Dominion's flagship, Overlord Xaravek snarled as alarms blared around him. His reptilian eyes flickered with confusion. This is impossible," he growled. "Humans should not be capable of this." But they were. Unlike the Dominion, who relied on sheer numbers, humans fought with intelligence. They used every advantage they had, speed, strategy, and technology, to strike the enemy where it hurt the most. The battle raged for hours. The Dominion fleet, once so confident, now struggled to hold its ground. Then came the final blow. From deep space, a massive human dreadnought arrived. The TDS Warhammer. It was the largest warship ever built by humanity, carrying an experimental weapon known as the Helios cannon. Admiral Carter watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Vengeance. He gave the final order. "Fire the cannon." A moment later, a blinding beam of energy erupted from the Warhammer. It cut through the Dominion's flagship, slicing it in half. Overlord Xaravek never had time to react. One moment he was shouting orders, the next, his ship was gone. The remaining Dominion ships panicked. They had never seen a weapon like this before. They tried to flee. But humans did not allow cowards to escape. One by one, the remaining Dominion warships were hunted down and destroyed. Victory and a dark truth. Hours later, the battlefield was silent. Human soldiers landed on the remaining Dominion wreckage, looking for survivors. What they found instead shook them to their core. Inside the wrecked Dominion ships were human prisoners. But these were not just captured civilians. They were experiments. Bodies of human captives lay in cold chambers, their organs removed, their bones replaced with strange metals. Some were still alive, barely breathing, trapped in horrific conditions. The Selvok had been harvesting humans for research. Carter stood over one of the twisted laboratories, his fists clenched in anger. "These monsters didn't just want to conquer us," he said coldly. They wanted to study us. They see us as test subjects. Adrian Voss knelt beside one of the barely living captives. A young soldier, his body covered in scars, gasped weakly. They wanted to know why we're different. Carter narrowed his eyes. And now they will find out. With the Excelvok fleet destroyed and New Olympus saved, humanity had proven they were not weak. But this was just the beginning. The Excelvok had made their greatest mistake. They had given humanity a reason to hate them. The galaxy had changed. The Excelvok Dominion, once feared across the stars, had suffered a defeat they never imagined. The destruction of their fleet at New Olympus sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. The humans were not just fighting back, they were winning. And they were angry. The War Council. Aboard the massive human warship, TDS Vengeance, Admiral Elias Carter stood before a large holographic map. Around him, his top commanders and officers listened in silence. The map showed a new target, the Dominion's Sigma Eridani Forward Command, a heavily defended space station controlling major supply lines. If humans took it, the Dominion's war efforts would collapse in this sector. Carter's voice was calm but firm. We struck first at New Olympus, and we won. Now we take the fight to them. No more waiting for them to come to us. Beside him, Captain Adrienne Voss crossed her arms. The station is heavily armed, she said. If we attack directly, we'll take heavy losses. Carter nodded. That's why we won't attack directly. He pressed a button on the console, and the map changed. A hidden asteroid field near the station appeared. We move in under stealth, Carter continued. We plant explosives inside the field, make it look like a natural disaster, and when they're distracted, we strike. Murmurs of approval filled the room. Commander Darius Cole, a veteran soldier, smirked. Let's burn them down. The ambush at Sigma Eridani. 2 days later, the Terran fleet arrived in the asteroid field near Sigma Eridani. The human warships engaged stealth mode, their advanced cloaking systems hiding them from enemy scanners. Deep inside the field, small human strike teams placed nuclear charges on several large asteroids. The plan was simple. Detonate the asteroids, make it look like a natural event, and when the Dominion fleet scrambled to investigate, attack. Everything was going perfectly. Until it wasn't. Betrayal in the ranks. Just as the final explosives were being set, an alarm blared inside the TDS Vengeance. Emergency broadcast detected, the AI announced. Carter turned sharply. From where? The communications officer's face went pale. From inside our fleet, sir. A moment later, the answer became clear. One of their own had betrayed them. A Dominion spy, disguised as a human officer, had sent out a distress signal before he was caught. It was too late. On the holographic display, red enemy signals began appearing everywhere. Carter's fists clenched. Damn it. The Dominion knows we're here. Before anyone could react, hundreds of Selvok warships dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons already charging. The trap had turned on the humans. The battle begins. The Dominion fleet wasted no time. Their plasma cannons and missile barrages ripped through space, forcing human warships to break formation. Human fighter squadrons launched immediately, engaging in chaotic dogfights with the enemy. Explosions filled the void as ships on both sides were torn apart. But humans did not panic. They adapted. Despite the ambush, Carter's mind worked fast. His fleet was in a bad position, but the asteroid charges were still in place. If they detonated them now, it could still create chaos. Carter grabbed the comms. Blow the charges. Now. A moment later, a massive chain reaction of explosions erupted in the asteroid field. Giant rocks shattered into thousands of fragments, sending deadly debris flying in all directions. The Excelvok fleet, caught off guard, took heavy losses. Several of their warships were crushed or torn apart by the high-speed debris. The battlefield was pure chaos. Now's our chance, Voss shouted. Carter didn't hesitate. All ships, attack. Show them what it means to fight humans. The human fleet pushed forward, striking at the weakened enemy. Railguns, plasma turrets, and EMP blasts tore through Dominion ships. Human boarding teams breached enemy vessels, fighting hand-to-hand against the reptilian invaders. For the first time in history, the Selvok Dominion was being pushed back. Victory and a grim warning. After 3 hours of brutal combat, the Dominion fleet broke formation and retreated. The once mighty Selvok, who had never known fear, had tasted defeat again. Inside the captured Dominion station, Carter and his soldiers secured data from the enemy's computers. What they found shocked them. A secret message from the Dominion High Command had been sent just hours before the battle. It contained a single order: Earth must be destroyed. Carter read the message in silence. His jaw tightened. He turned to Voss, his expression grim. "They're done playing games," he said. "They're coming for Earth." Voss exhaled sharply. "Then we need to stop them before they get the chance." Carter nodded. His fleet had won today. But the war was far from over. The Selvok had made their decision. They wanted Earth to burn. But humanity had its own answer. If the Dominion wanted war, then humanity would give them fire. The war had reached its most dangerous moment. The Selvok Dominion, humiliated by their losses at New Olympus and Sigma Eridani, had made their decision. Earth must be destroyed. Humanity's homeworld was no longer just a target. It was their final objective. A massive Selvok armada was already on its way. Over 200 warships, including dreadnoughts and carriers, had entered hyperspace, heading straight for the Sol system. The countdown had begun. Humanity had only 4 days before they arrived. There was no running, no surrender. Earth had to stand and fight. The last defense. Inside the Terran High Command bunker on Luna, Earth's moon, the most powerful leaders of humanity gathered for an emergency war council. Admiral Elias Carter stood at the center of the war table, surrounded by generals, fleet commanders, and top strategists. A holographic map of the Sol system floated above them, displaying defense lines, fleet positions, and planetary shields. Carter's voice was firm. "We don't have the numbers to match them. If we fight them in open space, we lose. But we don't need to match them. We just need to outsmart them." Commander Adrian Voss nodded. "If they reach Earth, we won't survive a full bombardment. We have to stop them before they get too close." General Marcus Hale, leader of the Planetary Defense Forces, leaned forward. "What's your plan, Admiral?" Carter took a deep breath. Every decision now could decide the fate of humanity. "We'll make Sol a trap," he said. "We turn our home into a fortress." The room fell silent as Carter activated the next phase of the hologram. Earth's orbital defenses would be fully activated, including thousands of automated turrets and missile platforms. Luna's mass driver cannons would be used for long-range attacks, striking the enemy before they even reached Earth. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter would be used as a natural minefield. Hundreds of explosives would be placed inside large asteroids, ready to detonate when the enemy passed through. But the biggest surprise was hidden inside Jupiter's stormy atmosphere. Carter's voice was cold as steel. "We've been working on a planet-killer weapon for years, hidden under Jupiter's clouds." A few gasps were heard around the room. He continued, "It's called Project Helios, a modified battleship carrying a massive EMP disruptor that can disable entire fleets for several minutes. If we time it right, we can shut down their ships before they reach Earth and wipe them out." General Hale exhaled. "That's a risky plan, Admiral." Carter met his gaze. "Risky? Yes. Necessary? Absolutely." He turned to the room. "We don't get a second chance. We win here, or we die." No one argued. They knew he was right. The order was given. Earth prepared for its final stand. The Selvok arrive. 4 days later, space around the Sol system cracked open as hundreds of Selvok warships exited hyperspace. The enemy armada stretched across the void, their ships dark and monstrous. At the center of the fleet was the Oblivion Spear, a miles-long dreadnought carrying enough firepower to turn Earth into dust. Inside the enemy flagship, Supreme Overlord Koruven stood with his arms crossed, watching the blue planet through the massive windows of his warship. "This is the end of humanity," he growled. "Burn everything." The attack began. Zelvok warships charged forward, firing plasma cannons and launching hundreds of attack drones. But the moment they entered the asteroid field, the trap was sprung. Massive explosions erupted as the hidden human charges detonated. Dozens of Zelvok ships were torn apart instantly, their hulls crushed by high-speed debris. Some tried to escape, only to be hit by human missile barrages from Luna. On board the TDS Vengeance, Carter watched the enemy struggle. His plan was working. But the battle was far from over. The Oblivion Spear pushed through the asteroid field, leading the remaining Zelvok forces straight toward Earth. Carter's eyes narrowed. "They're coming." Voss turned to him. "Is Project Helios in position?" Carter checked the status. The EMP disruptor ship was still hidden inside Jupiter's storm clouds, waiting for the right moment. "Almost," he said. "We need them to get closer." The final gambit. As the Zelvok dreadnought entered Earth's orbit, Carter gave the final order. "Activate Project Helios." From the depths of Jupiter's atmosphere, a hidden battleship emerged. Its EMP disruptor charged up, glowing bright blue. Then, a blinding pulse of energy exploded outward. In an instant, dozens of Zelvok warships shut down. Their engines flickered. Their weapons went silent. They were helpless. "Now," Carter roared. The human fleet surged forward, attacking the disabled enemy ships. Railguns shredded their hulls. Plasma torpedoes destroyed their carriers. Fighter squadrons cut down their drones. The Zelvok, once so sure of their victory, were being wiped out. Inside the Oblivion Spear, Supreme Overlord Koruven stared in shock. His fleet was falling apart. His voice was filled with rage. "Impossible. We are the Dominion. We do not fall to insects." But they had. The battle raged for another hour. By the end, only a handful of Zelvok ships remained. The once mighty armada had been crushed. Koruven, realizing the battle was lost, ordered a full retreat. His dreadnought turned and jumped into hyperspace, escaping destruction. Earth had won. The war is not over. As cheers filled the human fleet, Carter stood silently on the bridge, watching the enemy flee. Voss approached him. "We did it." Carter nodded, but his face was grim. "This was just one battle," he said. "The Dominion still exists, and they won't stop until we finish this war, for good." Voss understood. "Then we take the fight to them." Carter clenched his fists. "Yes. No more waiting. We end the Dominion." The siege of Sol was over. Now it was humanity's turn to invade. The siege of Sol was over. Earth had stood against the might of the Zelvok Dominion and survived. Their mighty armada had been crushed, their dreadnought forced to retreat. But humanity knew the truth. The war was not over. The Zelvok would return, stronger, angrier, and more determined. Admiral Elias Carter stood aboard the TDS Vengeance, watching the wreckage of enemy ships floating in space. His face was calm, but his mind was set on one decision. "No more waiting," he said. "We take the fight to them." Humanity would strike back. The plan to end the war. Inside the Turan War Council, the best minds of humanity gathered. The room was silent as Carter laid out the final plan. "Our scouts have tracked the Supreme Overlord's retreat. He fled to the Dominion's home system, Zelvok Prime." A holographic display showed a massive planet, surrounded by dozens of space stations and powerful fleets. Commander Adrienne Voss crossed her arms. "That's their heart, their strongest fortress. Attacking it is suicide." Carter didn't flinch. "Not if we do it right." He pressed a button, and the hologram changed, showing a different image. a hidden hyperspace lane discovered by human intelligence, leading straight into the Dominion's capital. They won't expect an attack through here, Carter explained. We use this route, bypass their defenses, and strike at the core of their empire. If we take Selvok Prime, the war ends. General Marcus Hale nodded. If we fail, we lose everything. Carter's voice was cold. Then we don't fail. The order was given. The final invasion had begun. The invasion begins. The Terran fleet, led by the TDS Vengeance, entered the hidden hyperspace lane. Hundreds of warships, carrying the finest soldiers of Earth, prepared for battle. Every soldier knew the truth. This was the last fight. If they won, humanity would be free. If they lost, Earth would burn. Carter stood on the bridge, staring at the countdown timer. 5 minutes until they reached Selvok Prime. His fists clenched. This is for Earth. The timer hit 0. The human fleet exited hyperspace, appearing right in the heart of the Selvok home system. The Dominion was caught completely off guard. Their defense fleets were positioned on the other side of the system, expecting an attack from the front. Now, the humans were already inside their territory. Carter wasted no time. All ships, attack. The battle had begun. Battle for Selvok Prime. The human fleet struck with precision. Destroyers and cruisers unleashed a storm of railgun fire, tearing through enemy ships. Fighter squadrons weaved through the chaos, taking down Dominion bombers before they could respond. Planetary defense stations fired plasma cannons, but Luna's long-range mass drivers returned fire, shattering them one by one. The Selvok, despite being caught off guard, fought back fiercely. Their warships engaged in desperate counterattacks, their massive dreadnoughts unleashing powerful energy beams that destroyed multiple human vessels. But humans did not break. They pushed forward, forcing their way toward the planet. Inside the Oblivion Spear, Supreme Overlord Koruven roared in rage. Destroy them. All ships, protect the homeworld. But it was too late. The final blow. Carter's fleet broke through the last defense lines. Selvok Prime, the heart of the Dominion, was now within reach. Human drop pods and assault ships launched, carrying thousands of elite soldiers to the surface. The Dominion's capital city, Voraktel, became a battlefield. Terran Marines, armed with advanced weapons and power armor, engaged Selvok warriors in brutal urban combat. Tanks and mechs rolled through the streets, blasting enemy fortifications. Explosions shook the skies as human bombers targeted military installations, crippling the enemy's war machine. In the chaos, Supreme Overlord Koruven made one last desperate move. He ordered a planetary evacuation, attempting to escape into deep space with his last remaining fleet. Carter saw the movement on the scanners. Not this time, he muttered. He turned to Voss. Bring them down. The TDS Vengeance fired its main railgun, delivering a devastating shot to the enemy's escape fleet. Koruven's flagship was hit directly, exploding in a massive fireball. The Supreme Overlord of the Selvok was dead. The Dominion's last hope was gone. The war ends. With Koruven's death, the Selvok leadership collapsed. Many surrendered. Others fled into the unknown, refusing to accept defeat. But the war was over. The Dominion had fallen. Humanity had won. On Selvok Prime, Carter stood in the ruined capital, watching the human flag being raised over the enemy palace. Voss walked up beside him. It's over. Carter nodded. Yes, but we can't make the same mistakes they did. Voss frowned. What do you mean? Carter turned to her, his expression serious. The Selvok ruled with fear. We rule with justice. If we don't, we'll just become them. Voss understood. Humanity had won the war, but now they had to win the peace. And they would, because humans never forgot what it meant to fight for freedom. As the sun set over Selvok Prime, Carter gave one final order. Let's go home. Epilogue. A new era begins. The war had changed the galaxy forever. The Excelvok Dominion was no more. Humanity had proven its strength, not just in war, but in wisdom. Instead of ruling with force, they helped rebuild. They ensured peace. A new alliance was formed, one where humanity stood as leaders, not conquerors. And as the stars shined over the victorious fleet, one thing was certain: Earth would never fear again. The war was over. The Excelvok Dominion had fallen. Their leader, Supreme Overlord Koruven, was gone. Their empire, once feared across the galaxy, was nothing but ruins. But victory did not mean peace. Not yet. Humanity had won, but now they faced a different battle. The battle to rebuild, to decide the future of the galaxy. Admiral Elias Carter stood aboard the TDS Vengeance, gazing at the burning world of Selvok Prime. The once great cities of the Dominion were in ruins. Ships still burned in orbit, their wreckage floating like silent ghosts. It was over. But something inside him felt uneasy. The challenge of victory. Inside the Turan War Council, now set up on Selvok Prime, leaders gathered to discuss what came next. Commander Adrienne Voss leaned against the war table, scanning reports. Most of the Dominion forces have surrendered, she said. Some are still resisting in the outer systems, but without leadership, they're not a real threat. General Marcus Hale nodded. The bigger problem is what to do with their people. Billions of Selvok citizens are still here. Their government is gone. Their cities are in ruins. What happens to them? Carter exhaled. This was the part of war no one liked to think about. Humanity had fought for survival, for freedom. But now they had the power to decide the fate of an entire species. Some wanted revenge. Others wanted justice. But Carter knew one thing: if they ruled with cruelty, they would become the very thing they had fought against. "We rebuild," he said finally. "We help stabilize the planet. We make sure this war doesn't lead to another one in the future." Hale frowned. "After everything they did to us." Carter's eyes were hard. "Yes, because we are better than them." Silence filled the room. Then Voss nodded. "I agree. The war is over. It's time to build something new. A divided galaxy." But not everyone agreed. On Earth, celebrations filled the streets. Humanity had won its greatest war, proving its strength to the galaxy. But among the cheers, there were whispers. Some factions wanted to rule the galaxy with an iron fist, ensuring that no alien race could ever threaten humanity again. Others believed in peace and diplomacy, forming a new alliance with the surviving Selvok and other species. Tensions were rising. Would humanity become conquerors or protectors? Carter received messages from Earth's new leaders, demanding a decision. "Humanity is now the most powerful force in the galaxy." One message read, "The question is, what do we do with that power?" Carter knew the answer was not simple. War had united them, but now peace threatened to divide them. The last survivors. Meanwhile, deep in the uncharted regions of space, a few Selvok warlords refused to surrender. They had fled before the final battle, gathering what remained of their fleets. Scattered and leaderless, they still dreamed of revenge. One of them, High Warlord Zortal, stood aboard his hidden warship, watching the transmissions from Selvok Prime. "The humans think they have won," he growled. "But the Excelvok will never kneel." His second-in-command, Commander Yorak, hesitated. "Our forces are weak. If we attack now, we will be crushed." Zortal's eyes burned with hatred. "Then we wait. We gather strength. And when the time is right." He clenched his fists. "We will remind the humans that wars do not end so easily." The remnants of the Dominion had not given up. A new war was coming. The path forward. Back on Selvok Prime, Carter walked through the ruined streets. He saw Selvok civilians watching from the shadows, unsure of what would happen to them. Fear was in their eyes. They expected humans to rule them as conquerors, to do to them what their own dominion had done to others. Instead, Carter ordered food and medical aid to be given to the people. He instructed engineers to help rebuild the city, not as a human colony, but as a place where both species could live in peace. A young Selvok child, no older than 5, approached him cautiously. She held out a small broken toy, something precious from before the war. Carter knelt and gently fixed it, handing it back. The child hesitated, then smiled. In that moment, he knew this was the real victory. Not in destroying enemies, but in proving humanity's strength came from more than just war. A warning to the stars. As the rebuilding began, Carter sent one final message to the rest of the galaxy. It was broadcast to every surviving species, to every planet that had once feared the Dominion. "This war is over," he said. "Humanity did not start this conflict, but we finished it." He paused, his voice growing sharper. "Let this be a warning. Never again will Earth allow itself to be threatened. If any power rises to challenge us, if anyone dares to bring war to our people," his eyes turned cold, "your worlds will burn." Silence followed. The message was clear. Humanity would not seek war, but they would never be victims again. Across the stars, leaders listened. Some felt relief, others felt fear, because they now knew the truth. Earth was no longer just another planet. It was the new power of the galaxy. Epilogue. Shadows of the future. Far away, in the darkest corners of the galaxy, a new force was watching. Not Selvok, not any known race. Something older, something stronger. As they watched humanity rise, a whisper echoed through the void. The humans have proven themselves. They are ready. Soon, they will face the true war. The stars remained silent. For now, humanity had won. The Exelvok Dominion was no more. The war that had nearly destroyed Earth had ended with human victory. The Terran fleet now stood as the strongest force in the galaxy. But peace did not come easily. Even as the Terran forces rebuilt Selvok Prime, even as treaties were signed and alliances formed, Admiral Elias Carter felt uneasy. Something was wrong. He could not explain it, but deep in his heart, he knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. Strange signals from the void. Weeks after the war, humanity picked up strange signals from the edges of the galaxy. The signals did not match any known language, any known species. At first, scientists thought they were just random cosmic noise. But as they studied further, they realized something terrifying. The signals were not random. They were a message, and it was not friendly. Carter, along with Commander Adrian Voss, stood in the control room of the TDS Vengeance, listening to the transmission. A deep, unnatural voice echoed through the speakers. "We have seen your war. We have seen your strength. And now, we are coming." The message repeated over and over. Carter exchanged a look with Voss. "Who sent this?" The lead scientist, Dr. Helen Graves, swallowed hard. "We don't know. The source is outside the galaxy." Silence filled the room. Carter's eyes darkened. Something beyond the Milky Way was watching them, and it was not afraid. The dark fleet approaches. Days later, humanity's deep space scanners detected movement beyond the galactic edge. Massive unidentified ships, bigger than anything ever recorded, were moving toward the Milky Way. "They're not just scouting," Voss murmured. "They're invading." Carter clenched his fists. The war with the Exelvok had been a battle for survival. But this was different. This was something greater than any enemy they had ever faced. For the first time, he felt a cold chill of uncertainty. Could humanity win this fight? The first contact. The unknown fleet entered the outer edges of the galaxy. Humanity's forward defense stations picked up their presence. Then, without warning, the invaders attacked. Outpost Delta 7, a human station guarding the outer rim, was the first to fall. Its defenses shattered in seconds, its distress signal cutting off mid-transmission. No one escaped. The Terran War Council scrambled to respond. Carter ordered the entire fleet to mobilize. But as he studied the enemy's movements, a terrible realization struck him. "They're not targeting planets," he murmured. "They're destroying military outposts first." Voss's eyes widened. "They're preparing for something bigger." It was clear this was not a simple attack. This was the beginning of a full-scale war. The enemy revealed. Humanity's fleets engaged the enemy in the Battle of Orion's Edge. For the first time, they saw their new enemy up close. The invaders were not like the HFY. They were something else. Towering war machines with black, insect-like armor. Ships that absorbed energy instead of being damaged by it. Soldiers that moved with inhuman precision. These were not just another alien race. They were something ancient, something designed for war. And their message was clear. You are strong, but not strong enough. The battle for survival. The fight against the new enemy was unlike any war humanity had ever fought. Human railguns and plasma cannons barely scratched their ships. The enemy's weapons bypassed shields, striking straight into hulls. They adapted, learning from every battle, adjusting their strategies. For the first time since the war began, humanity was losing. Carter watched as entire fleets were torn apart, as colonies sent desperate distress signals. His mind raced. There had to be a way to win. And then he realized something. These enemies had been watching humanity's war with the HFY. They had seen how humans fought, but they had never seen how humans survived. They had never seen what humans were truly capable of when pushed to the edge. Carter turned to Voss. "They think they know us," he said. "They think they've seen everything we can do." He smiled grimly. "They're wrong." Humanity's last stand. The Terran fleet retreated to Earth. The enemy followed. It was clear the final battle would be fought on humanity's homeworld. But Earth was not defenseless. Every soldier, every ship, every weapon was ready. Because this time, humanity was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for everything. Carter stood before his soldiers, his voice firm. "They think they can break us," he said. "They think we will surrender." He looked across the battlefield, at the men and women who had fought through hell itself to stand here. "They don't understand what it means to be human." He raised his fist. "They don't understand that when you push us to the edge." His voice echoed across the command center. "We push back." The enemy descended upon Earth. And humanity was ready. The final battle had begun. Epilogue. The fate of the galaxy. Across the stars, other species watched in silence. Some had once feared humanity. Now, they hoped. Because if humanity fell, the rest of the galaxy would fall with them. But if humanity stood victorious, then perhaps, just perhaps, the greatest war in history would end with the rise of something new. The rise of humanity as the true protectors of the galaxy. The stars held their breath, and the war for the future of the universe began.